Another blessed day. We want to thank God for another blessed day. I thank God for allowing me to make this video, and I want to thank God for allowing you to watch the video. I got really inspired, man, after watching that documentary about the legendary NASCAR race driver, Dale Earnhardt. He actually got a son also by the name of Dale Earnhardt Jr. You know, really incredible when we think about the sport of NASCAR and just the history behind the racing. But this video inspired me because I've discovered some things about the LT1, the Generation 5 6.2 liter all aluminum Gen 5 small block that Chevrolet has produced. This engine actually shares a lot of similarities with that legendary R07 engine, if you could believe that. We're talking about the R07, for those who do not know, is the current V8 that NASCAR is running in their Cup series racing. That's a 5.8 liter, 358 cubic inches of displacement. Just absolute monster. This engine could run from 725 all the way up to 850 horsepower, naturally aspirated. But the reason being is all because of the technology. And guess what they're running, guys? A push rod, cam and block design, overhead valve V8. It's so funny because I dropped a video a couple months, not even like a couple weeks back. It's called LT1, better than the 5.0 liter Coyote, and with some question marks, because I generally wanted to ask the public a question. And man, some gearheads got in the comments, and it was just an awesome discussion. You had so many Coyote guys giving their impressions, but for the guy that said that push rod is dead, he also said naturally aspirated horsepower is dead. I would beg to differ, man. I would beg to differ, because here we have it. NASCAR runs a push rod V8, a cam and block, with overhead valve. We're talking about technology that Henry Ford would recognize today in 2025. So I definitely don't think cam and block push rod is dead, and I definitely don't think naturally aspirated horsepower is dead. But here we have it, guys, where I couldn't believe it until I did the research. But the LT1 6.2 liter V8 actually shares a ton of similarities with that R07, completely built for racing, developed by Chevrolet. This engine, the R07 that is, was first introduced in 2007. It's the replacement for the SB2, I believe. For those of you NASCAR fans in there, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But like I said, that motor can make north of 900 horses, but NASCAR just cap it to about 850 to make, everybody on the same playing field. But this engine actually shares a ton of similarities, guys. And I'm going to go over several of them that actually might surprise you. And the LT1, as we all know, is a road car. It's made for the streets. It's built for longevity. It's got emissions regulations, all sorts of emission stuff, catalytic converters, O2 sensors, and, the whole 9 yards, just to, keep the EPA happy. So for an engine like this to be compared to an all-out race engine, which is just screaming, I mean, those things can rev up to freaking 10,000 RPMs, but they cap them to about 9. So think about that, a cam and block. And that's another thing. This is not a Coyote we're talking about with the dual overhead cams. We're talking about a cam and block engine. Yes, they can rev to 10,000 RPMs. It's all about how you build it, baby. It's all about how you build it. But let's take a closer look at this engine. Look at this chart that I'm about to show you, or rather this image, as we dive deeper into this discussion. So there she is up on your screen, guys. That's an R07 that you're staring at in all its glory. This motor produces 850 naturally aspirated horsepower, and it really struck me like a ton of bricks. As you pay close attention, that's a carburetor up top you're looking at. That's right, carburetor. It's got a high ram intake setup. I've already mentioned it's 5.8 liters, approximately 358 cubic inches. And this thing could turn north of 9,000 RPMs. Let that sink in, guys. That's a push rod, cam and block design, all race motor that Chevrolet General Motors has produced. Let's take a closer look at the internals, because obviously this is a race engine, and it's the block. I mean, everything is just a whole nother animal. And there she is, guys. That's the block. Really freaky. Haven't seen anything like this, but it's quite interesting. That's your R07. And this thing was first introduced in 2007. It's funny because unlike the LT1, they're running port fuel injection. Obviously, they also feature a dry sump oiling system. So, it's not like a regular, most commuter cars, including the Camaro SS, the 5.0 liter Mustang, the Scat Packs, your M2s, M3s. Most cars that you see on the road, they have a different oiling system. They got a wet sump. So that basically means all your oil is sitting at the bottom of the engine in an oil pan. This engine obviously is a race engine, and it's an entirely different ball game. It has a dry sump, so the oil is in a separate canister, and it flows to the engine whenever oiling is needed, and all through all the galleries. And basically that helps when you're doing tight corners around a track or very spirited driving. You don't have to worry about the oil splashing everywhere, possibly causing oil starvation to the engine. So you tend to see that technology in, just straight up race cars. But believe it or not, for you Chevy fans out there, the Camaro Z28 with that legendary 7-liter LS7 also had a dry sump oiling system. That was also in the C6 Vet. But let's dive deeper. This is an iron block. So they're running aluminum heads, but that's on an iron block. The bore spacing is about 4.500, versus, a standard 4.400. So pretty big bore. As we know, the bigger the bore is, you're getting a bigger explosion, which ultimately means bigger power. So just a freaky design, no variable valve timing. This is an all-out race motor. But let's look at the LT1, because I'm getting ready to show you some similarities that's really going to surprise you. It definitely surprised me. And before we move over and look at that LT1 block, pay attention to the cylinder walls. You see those holes right there around the opening of the block? Those are gusseted water jackets. And pay close attention to that, because that is the same setup that is on the LT1. That's right. It also features gusseted water jackets that look exactly almost like this R07 that we're looking at. Let's go ahead and look at that LT1 block, and I'm going to share over 5 similarities that the LT1 Gen 5 has, like this powerful all-out race motor. It's really crazy. And there she is. That's the LT1. That's the Generation 5, first introduced in the C7 Corvette in 2014, producing 460 horses and 465 pound-feet of torque. Pay attention to the same holes right there around the cylinder bores. You see those little holes, almost like triangles and dots? Those are gusseted water jackets. This engine block actually shares several similarities with the legendary R07 engine. First of all, let's just call a spade a spade. They're both V8s, 90-degree V8 engines. They also share pushrod cam and block technology design. Old school, even Henry Ford would recognize it. Simple, simplicity is key. I keep telling guys, nothing against the overhead valve engines. They're phenomenal motors. They breathe well up top, but it just goes to show you, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Also, they're both naturally aspirated engines. That's right, no boost, no turbocharger, no supercharger, no sort of force induction, just all out power. Naturally aspirated horsepower. Big burbly V8 putting out a ton of torque and a ton of power. Another thing that they share, they're both overhead valve design engines with featuring 2 valves per cylinder. A lot different from the Coyote, which we know is a 32 valve engine, which features 4 valves per cylinder. This is simplicity. You have your intake valve and you have your exhaust valve. That's it. I've already went over the gusseted water jackets, but I'm gonna share another thing with you. Both of these engines feature piston oil squirting technology. That's simply literally a fastener that's screwed on to the engine block, and it's almost like a tube that, you know, literally squirts oil under the bottom of that piston to help the cooling, which obviously increases horsepower, because you know that piston is under a lot of stress, guys. We're talking about literally explosions pushing it down and it's coming back up. Another explosion pushing it down, it's coming, and another explosion. So that piston is literally going through hell. So having those oil squirters really starts to free up the game. You know, really start to. Let's take a closer look at these engine from an internal perspective. And there it is, guys, the LT1. You know, as you look really close at this thing, I mean, if it's just such a simple engine. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You got your dual overhead valve. You have your intake valve, your exhaust valve. One thing about the LT1, though, that is a little bit different from that race engine is that it features direct injection. And this technology is pretty good. Is it necessary for power? I don't think so, because look at what the R07 is running. It's running port style. And the thing's putting out damn near 1,000 horses, naturally aspirated at 5.8 liters, 358 cubic inches. Granted, that's a race engine, so hey, you really shouldn't be surprised. But that's crazy, dude. I mean, when you think about it, the LT1 is not even making 500 horses out of the box. You know, granted, we could go to the aftermarket world, we could do mods, and you know, we could easily with intake, exhaust, probably could make 500 horses without even going to E85. You know, Chevy really left a lot of room. Add a little bit more time in, get an aftermarket tune. I mean, forget about it. You know, but very interesting here as we look at the LT1. You know, I love this motor. It's all aluminum, so it's a little bit different from the R07 as far as the block. The R07 features a cast iron block made out of graphite, so definitely could hold more power. With the aluminum, the advantage on the LT1 side is that it dissipates heat a lot better. So just some things to think about. Let's take a little bit closer look at that R07 from an internal perspective. And there she is, guys, in all her glory, in all her beauty. Man, Chevy. Long live the V8. Long live the push rod. Long live the cam and block design. You know, they really doubled down, man. And in fact, they said that they're actually getting ready to release their new generation of their V8s, possibly coming out in the year 2026, maybe 2027. Don't hold me to it. But they invested millions of dollars, guys. You know, in a world that everybody's focusing on a lot on technology, you're starting to see a lot more EVs on the road. You know, I remember back, I used to just see Tesla, but now all sorts of brands are coming out with their own version of electric cars. And don't get me wrong, they have their place in the world. But for the gearheads out there, for the guys who just love turning wrenches, for the guys who just love smoking some tires, man, and just listening to the rumble of a V8 engine, there's nothing like it, man. But there she is, the R07. Now, let's take a closer look internally, guys. Like I already told you, this is an all-out race engine designed by Chevrolet for the Cup Series Nascar racing. You know, this thing is just an animal, naturally aspirated. Everything internally is beefed up. Forged aluminum crankshaft, forged pistons. You know, the entire rotating assembly is just basically built like it's on steroids, man. Look at those big long tube headers, man. You know, if you know, you know. If you've been to NASCAR and you came up close, front row seats, let me tell you, you won't be hearing for at least a couple hours. These things scream, all right? And they kept the manual, they kept the V8. They doubled down and they stuck to it. Recently, they moved over to sequential, which is still a manual transmission, but instead of the H pattern, they went to sequential style shifting. Just a little bit more efficient, quicker shifts. But I just love how NASCAR just stick to the roots, man. You know, we're running V8s, we're running manual transmission, and we're running race cars, man. We're driving. Shout out to Dale Earnhardt. That documentary was very, very inspiring. Anybody who's a gearhead, I would advise you to check that out. The guy that wasn't just a race car driver. He actually turned wrenches. He actually wouldn't even let a lot of mechanics touch his car. He wanted to be the only one to touch his car. Very interesting, you know, and I can understand that. You know, your car is very much like your woman. You should be the only one touching it, if you think about it. Now, there's another interesting topic that I want to talk about. Let's take a look back at this LT1. And there she is, guys, in all her glory. You know, first introducing that C7 Corvette. This engine is just absolutely incredible. I mean, if you know, you know. There's been a guy out there swapping a lot of these LT1 engines into the Jeep JKs. And it just makes such an incredible difference. The low-end torque, the drivability. It almost got that Jekyll and Hyde personality. You know, it could just roll down the road so smooth. It just feels like it's barely under any stress, especially when you got it around, you know, 2,000, 2,500 RPMs. We're talking about that slow turning V8. That slow turning V8 and producing so much power, so much torque. In my car, for example, even when I'm cruising on the highway and I get up to 6th gear, dude, I'm hitting like 80 miles per hour and I'm barely at 2,000 RPMs. The engine is barely turning and I'm pushing 80 miles per hour. So it just goes to show you there's just no replacement. None. No replacement for displacement. You know, for that guy out there, and don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of the Coyote. I'm a huge fan of the Hemi engine. But this LT1 is truly the future. The cam and block design, it's low stress. The motor's going to live long. Granted, just like any other engine, it has its weaknesses, it has its strengths. It has its pros, it has its cons. Some of the cons that I don't like about this motor is probably obviously the active fuel management, AFM. You know, just, dude, I'm not a fan of that. If you're buying a V8, you're buying a V8. You already know it's not going to get the greatest fuel economy. Let's get rid of that, because that active fuel management tend to lead to lifter failures. That's why a lot of the gearheads, a lot of hot rodders, they just delete it. Another thing that I would say is that at first, the direct injection did concern me, but, you know, GM did a lot of R&D into this engine. This engine comes from the factory with an oil catch can. I run a Mishimoto oil catch can on mine just to keep the intake manifold cleaner. But if you run this engine, you get it up to temperature, you run the 040 or the 5W30 Dexos, you won't have any issues, guys. Don't drive it like a grandma. Give it that good old-fashioned Italian tune-up. The motor will do you right. Now, if you're going to own it for a long time, you know, well into 150, 200 K miles, you know, there's some things that have been commonly known to go with these motors. Like I said, the lifters, especially if you have an automatic, because it's constantly switching from 4-cylinder to 8-cylinder. And like I said, guys, you know, you're better off with a manual transmission or just delete the technology. But there's some things that you can do to prevent that. Stay on top of your maintenance. If the oil is dirty, get it out of there. There's no such thing as a 10,000 mile oil change. 5,000, no more. Change the oil. Keep it clean. Take care of the motor. The motor's going to take care of you. And you'll get plenty of life out of your engine, guys. But guess what, guys? The most important part of this channel is God. I want to let you know God loves you. He's our creator. He's the one. Every good gift comes from him. Let's just remember to keep him first. Trust in him. Talk with him. Communicate with him. Talk to him like he's your best friend. Share your secrets with him like he's your journal. And just keep him first, and he will see you through. I want to say a prayer for every soul that's watching this video. I pray that you bless them, God. I pray that you prosper them. I pray, God, that you help them to keep you first. I pray that you give them their heart's desire, as long as it is according to your will. Hey, I love you guys. Keep God first. See you later.